3 who came to the screening and they loved it. So.
Oh, okay.
And then they said, then they emailed Carrie the next day and said, Ridley would like to see the film. So yeah.
Wow. First of all, I should just introduce.
Yes.
I'm Chris Gore from the Film Threat Podcast here in Park City, Utah at the Sundance Film Festival. Sitting right across from me is Alexandre O. Philippe is that correct?
Alexandre Philippe, yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Alexandre Philippe. And last time we spoke, oddly enough, you interviewed me. And it was for your documentary, The People...
Was it the last time we spoke? No.
Last time we spoke... Oh, no, I saw you after that. I saw you after because I saw you at screenings.
That's right.
Yeah. But I happened to appear in that documentary, and I always know when it was on was it Netflix, right?
It was on Netflix.
Yeah,
it was on Netflix, yeah.
That I always get emails from people or social posts like, hey, you were in that movie? So, yeah.
That's right. That's right.
But you are here at the 2019 Sundance Film Festival with another documentary in the same realm of pop culture, Memory, The Origins of Alien, which... Now, I thought I had seen and know everything about the film Alien.
Right.
This, I'm shocked. I mean, just the level of detail that you go into in terms of starting with Dan O'Bannon, who wrote the original script, and his influences as a kid. Dan O'Bannon is sort of where the project starts with his widow. Yeah. Can you talk about that, sort of the genesis of this project? And I'm dying to get into depth on Alien.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, this project initially was going to be a film, very much about the Chestburster scene, the way that 7852, my previous film is about the shower scene from Psycho. But, this is what's so interesting about cinema is that you can't approach or deconstruct those two scenes in the same way. And they're very different beasts, and I don't make behind the scenes documentaries. That's not what I do. I make films that really examine the sort of the deeper meanings of these moments that have a huge impact on us as a culture and as a collective. And so very quickly I realized that my real interest in the Chestburster scene was its mythological roots and its origins and all of the things that happened in what Will Lin, who's in the film, who is with the Joseph Campbell Foundation, talks about. He says it's the cauldron of stories that was in Dan O'Bannon's mind and in H.R. Giger's imagination, and all of these things that happened in their unconscious that ultimately led us to the Chestburster, And this includes Greek and Egyptian mythologies. It includes underground comics. It includes parasitic wasps. It includes his Crohn's disease. It includes his passion for, his fear of insects and his interest in these movies from the 50s. And then other influences, movies like Queen of Blood, like The Terror from Beyond Space, like Planet of the Vampires. I mean, you name it. It's all there, and it all points to and leads to the Chestburster,
Well, it's interesting because that scene, the Chestburster scene, and I saw Alien when I was a kid. I mean, I was, 12, 13 when it came out. And that scene affected, first of all, I knew it was coming because I saw something in a magazine and I had heard people talk about this scene. I am in the movie theater, which was the Americana Theater in Detroit, Michigan, when a group of people, as soon as you see Kane start to be in agony, I saw 20 people get up out of their seats and run to the bathroom scared. I didn't, originally when I first saw the movie, I didn't actually see the scene. I went to the bathroom, standing with a group of men, hearing the screams in the Dolby sound in one of the biggest movie theaters in Detroit. So I actually didn't see the scene the first time. It's described in the documentary by several of the people you interview as being iconic. I think it's more than that. It is a scene, and this is why I think it deserves its own movie, that it changed movies. And I think that there's another one, perhaps you'll agree with me on this one, is the scene in Dawn of the Dead where we saw the head explode. I have never seen that in a movie. I saw it also for the first time in a theater. Didn't know it was coming. There's no warning for that. And that also scarred me in a similar way because it's something that at least I had never seen anything even close to that on screen. So I think the Chestburster scene for you to do, to explore all, every potential influence. I think one of the things that surprised me the most was the comic books.
Yeah. I mean, it's first I want to talk about your story. I find it's really fascinating. I never. I know people were throwing up. I know people, somebody broke a leg, I think, on the first screening, just trying to run out. But this idea that a bunch of people were expecting the scene and ran out before it actually happened is fascinating to me. So you experienced it from a bathroom with a bunch of guys, and you heard the sound.
We heard the sound. It was a bathroom with adults.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah, and this is a theater that was in Detroit, so it was like every type of person. It's just like all types of people just standing there, but it was all men. And they were scared. So
they all knew it was coming.
They kind of
sensed it.
They sensed that it was
That's remarkable.
That's
remarkable.
Yeah.
That's as you said, how often do movies have that impact? There's very, very few movies. I mean, obviously, the psycho shower scene is another one of those moments. The one that I think in my lifetime really as a movie goer, because I didn't get to experience Alien on the big screen. I obviously didn't get to experience Psycho on the big screen. The one that stands out is the Blair Witch Project. I remember being in a theater in New York City. It was a huge theater. I can't remember what it was, but it was about 2,000 seater. And the final shot, there was this absolute collective sigh of horror from the whole audience. Went like, it's like this shudder just going through the theater. And I've never experienced anything since quite like that. So those moments are, as you said, they're very, very, very rare. In a very different way, I'm your father moment in Empire Strikes Back, right?
Yes.
Is one of those moments, not in a horrific way, but in a what kind of sort of a way. I mean, I remember as a kid standing up in the theater going, what the fuck is going on here,
I also remember, which I saw in the same theater, the Americana, The Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
And I remember people not liking The Empire Strikes Back, being pissed off, angry. Someone stood up and said, that's it? Because it ended on a cliffhanger with Han Solo being taken away. The movie wasn't finished, right? We didn't see the complete story. People were upset. So I think this would divert into a whole other conversation about Last Jedi. But
before you know it, we'll be talking about Jar Jar Binks.
Right. Let's not do that. Old territory. We've done it.
Exactly.
But I happen to love Last Jedi. But I don't think there's been a moment in a Star Wars film that has topped it since. That we've had that kind of. Although
well, it's really difficult, It's really really rare. Mm-hmm. It's really rare, and
lunch is just being delivered because you've been doing back-to-back interviews all day.
What do we have here? I don't know. Potatoes of some kind.
Hey, be careful. Kane had his last meal. It looks sort of similar.
You want something?
No, thank you. I'm all good.
Always that right? Okay.
But
that's a lot of food. Okay.
What I love about the film is just having. Every behind-the-scenes thing that has ever existed about Alien, I have seen it.
Yeah.
I've seen it. I've listened to the commentary tracks. I've watched all the behind-the-scenes. I have the quadrilogy DVD set, which is amazing. There's so much footage of behind-the-scenes.
Right.
But what you did is you took a deeper dive just to the roots of that scene and the roots of Alien, beginning with, of course, Dan O'Bannon's mind and where he, all of his pop culture influences. I think the thing that impressed me the most of what you dug up were the comic books, that there were comic books that sort of alluded to something similar. What was it? The guy Peach Pit was his nickname.
Seeds of Jupiter from 1951. EC comic, which is remarkable, and then later on the story defiled from Death Rattle, which is an underground comic by Tim Boxall, who was in the house. He was with us. It was very cool to actually share the film with him, and because I don't think many people know that story, But yeah, I mean, I think I think what makes it's funny in a way, I think that what you're talking about is that. Memory, of course, is a film about the Chestburster. It's a film about Alien, but in many ways, it's not. In many ways, it's really a film about the resonance of myth and about our collective unconscious, right? And I think that's what makes it fundamentally different from anything that has been made about this particular film. And what I'm hoping is that it will make people look at not just Alien, but of course the importance of the Chestburster scene through a completely different lens. This idea that that Alien became a success in 1979 at a time when people were ready for the cute, cuddly, friendly alien, when really it wasn't supposed to be a success, because Alien expressed ideas onto the big screen that we needed to process as a collective. And I think that's what those moments do. When a scene like this has that kind of an impact, especially on men, which is very interesting.
See?
There was the men running to the bathroom, not the women.
Nope, it was all men.
Well, there you go. So what does that tell you? And I think it had that, this, without giving away memory, this idea, and that's a statement that I make in the film, that there was an unconscious patriarchal guilt, which 40 years later we're starting now to talk about openly in our society, but there was an imbalance. Which is what, by the way, the Greek Furies represent, that we needed to process, that we still need to process. And that's what makes Alien such a remarkably contemporary film.
And what I love that you also explore in the documentary is, the Chestburster scene is, it changed cinema, it's iconic, but Alien did other things that were radical for its time. For example, the expectation that Captain Dallas, Tom Skerritt, would be the hero. He's the captain of the ship. We've seen other television shows and whatnot where the captain is always the central focus, male captain, of course referencing James T. Kirk from Star Trek. So the expectation, seeing this, is the captain's going to be the hero and they're just going to dispense with the alien. Well, that didn't happen. And Sigourney Weaver, what I love about the way that Ridley Scott treated the characters is they were, in a sense, their gender was irrelevant. They dressed the same, right? They didn't have jobs that were traditionally male or female, right? And Sigourney Weaver, launched her as launched her career, but also just as a hero in cinema to be. But what I like is it's not. That idea it's not forced. It's not, there's no, let's just say that the agenda is not so obvious.
Yes.
And the thing is, she's just a badass, and there's no, whereas I think that I understand, not that I agree with, but I understand some of the issues people have with Last Jedi, that I feel like it feels like some of the choices in Last Jedi have an agenda behind them. Right. And whereas I feel in Alien, it was 100% organic, and it's just...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she was the smart one from the beginning. Yeah. Don't let him in the ship. Quarantine, all of those. She was the one. The level of depth that you get into with this, it really is. Like, I feel like I took a 12-week course in Alien. Like, that's like ideas that I knew were kind of there, but what you were able to uncover, and I don't want to give away everything, is the first time I've ever seen this.
Well, thanks. No, that's I appreciate this, and we worked really hard to get to that point. It's my process, I think, really of making memory has been very different from any other film that I've made. It's also a film that has very much come from the unconscious. I've felt very much guided in those particular directions, and chance encounters and serendipity, and we have this whole segment on Ash. And Ash's misogyny, which I was not, quite frankly, planning to explore until Clark Wolfe, who's in the film. I love
Clark Wolfe. I know Clark.
Awesome.
She's great.
She's awesome. Yeah. But her argument and the way she frames it, and the way that she talks about it is so compelling and so thought provoking that and it fits so well within the larger argument of the film that that was a thread that we had to explore. So all those things sort of came together very, very quickly. I mean, I finished writing the screenplay back in June, and we sent it to Sundance on October 5th. So it was fast track.
Wow. I want to talk about a couple things. The process of making the movie, but I want to start with Dan O'Bannon and how you were able to uncover those archives. And just if I could speak for a moment about, to give you some time to eat your lunch.
I'm good.
No, take your time. But Dan O'Bannon, I was just a fan of his work because I saw Dark Star. Yeah. I happen to have, I don't know how, I had this thing called On TV in Detroit, and Dark Star was one of the movies they showed. Wow. And first of all, that movie is wildly funny. You've got a creature on the ship, just like Alien. It's a beach ball.
It's awesome.
It's awesome.
I mean, it is Alien. I mean, you're talking about...
Yeah.
It's a draft of Alien. It's a comedic draft of Alien. And I think, once again, had the relationship between O'Bannon and Carpenter not soured, we probably wouldn't have Alien in a way. Because I think what happened was... became an impetus for Dan to say, okay, fine. Well, I'm gonna make my Alien, and it's not gonna be funny anymore. It's gonna be scary. And but if you look at Dark Star next to Alien, it's remarkable.
No, it's and the other thing that was explored in Dark Star that I think is underestimated is the bombs. The bombs that they have on the ship they are aware. So it's a little even precursor to AI and how AI is probably going to kill us. Starting with these devices that control us, that I'm recording this podcast with, like these black mirrors that we all hold in our hands now, that I don't think we even know the degree to which it has affected us. I mean, we're only now beginning, I think, iPhones became affordable about 10 years. It was almost not quite around 10 years ago. And so when they became affordable, you can see, everything from, rise in depression and other things. We don't know what these things are going to do to us, which is why I think science fiction is such a great place to explore the things we fear. So tell me about Dan O'Bannon. Obviously, he's not in the film because he passed away, but...
I mean, there's archival.
Archival interviews.
And there's a lot of drawings, never seen before, drawings and autoportraits of Dan and story notes and, all kinds of stuff. I was introduced to Diane O'Bannon, his widow, through Frank Pavich, who did Jodorowsky's Dune. Another really interesting, beautiful little sort of connection there, I feel, from Dune to Alien once again, And when I went to her house for the first time, she had all these boxes opened everywhere in the living room. And then I walk in and I'm seeing these, storyboards from early storyboards from Ron Cobb, where you start seeing where the derelict was a pyramid. I'm seeing these story notes from Dan and these drawings, the script for They Bite, which was also another precursor of Alien, which is a remarkable screenplay, by the way. And then the two versions of the screenplay called Memory, which is an unfinished script. There's version A and version B, and those are things that the fans have been talking about for decades, have been speculating about, and suddenly here I am holding this thing in my hands, and I'm like, holy shit, what's going on here, And Diane is just wonderful. I think it was the right encounter at the right time. I think she was waiting for the right person to walk in and to commit to really paying tribute to Dan in a meaningful way, and I think she sensed that in us, and I'm really delighted that she. She basically opened the archives and said, "You just go for it."
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I mean, you see the archives in the film. I mean, it's all these, office paper banker boxes all over with drawings and I love the labels on it, treatments, ideas. This is before computers, so here they are, just boxes of ideas.
Yeah, and all these unfinished, all these alternate endings and. I mean, there's a lot of stuff there. Actually, I've talked to Diane about. I think there's a book that needs to be written. That I want to collaborate with her on that.
That was my first thought.
To show the evolution, but very specifically, I mean, there's many books, that can be done. But I think very specifically that maps out the evolution of the story in Dan's mind from memory. In fact, I would say from the bite to memory to Star Beast to these alternate endings, of which there are plenty, which I think would be fascinating for fans to read, and then the different versions of the script Alien, which the very first version of the screenplay, when it was called Alien, so because first it was Memory, then it was Star Beast, then it became Alien. The very first version that was actually titled Alien, the Chestburster, shows up on page, I believe 73 or 77 of a 110-page script. So shows up way, way, way late. So to me, that stuff that's film history, and I think it's really very important to also preserve that. So that's kind of a step 2 for me to help Diane with that, because I think she's really overwhelmed with all those boxes she has,
Right.
And it's not just Alien. I mean, she's got boxes on on Dark Star, on Return of the Living Dead, on all these unfinished ideas and scripts that have never been released, and she's sitting on some marvelous things. Yeah.
Wow. Well, it could be, the book could be something like that Kubrick Files, like a Taschen book.
Well, that's exactly my thought. I really want to, and I told her this. I think we need to take this to Taschen, and I would like to, because my background is in dramatic writing, and I'm very interested in story, and I would like to kind of take this apart and kind of annotate the evolution of the story from the perspective of a screenwriter, and then be able to publish all of that stuff,
Cool.
So hopefully we'll be able to do that as a next step. It'd be fun.
Now, what I've seen the film. It's going to come out at some point. We know this.
Yeah,
we know that you can't announce a distributor or anything yet.
Well, they've just started seeing it since 2 days ago. We are having a meeting tomorrow that sounds very, very promising. So and we have a great sales agent on this. So yeah, stay tuned for that for sure. Yeah,
people are definitely going to get to see it. But what I'd like to know, just because I'm a DVD fanatic and I love the stuff you couldn't put in the movie, I want. What are there things that you explored that didn't make the cut that you could tell us about on the show? I mean, what's great is the H.R. Giger stuff I love.
Oh yeah.
He's just, I've always just, I have so many, whenever there's like a H.R. Giger book of art.
They're incredible.
They're incredible. And I actually wrote him, when he launched his website, I don't know, I just wrote him a letter, and he sent back this little pin that was, it was just for no reason. He just did this.
That was nice.
And I kept it. It's incredible. But what didn't make the cut that you could tell us about?
Well, I mean, I think to me, in terms of the content of what we filmed for the interviews, there's probably some deeper ideas, especially about mythology, that would be really interesting to talk about, but that's, it's heavier stuff, I guess. The question is, once we actually have a distributor and we know that we are going to have some kind of a, Blu-ray release, is, how much does Diane want to share as bonus feature? How much does the Giger estate want to share? I mean, we were working very closely with both. And we had, we talked about Dan, but, we were given equal access to Giger's archive. And there's an extensive collection of stills, of footage, of obviously paintings and drawings, and you name it. And Leslie Barani and Carmen Giger, who are also our executive producers, gave us full access to, essentially everything we needed, and in super, super high res, which is why we were able to do these really great camera moves on some of these amazing paintings, and it looks great on the big screen, So yeah, well, we may want to share some of that. Right now it's my mind is more focused on the getting through the festival circuit. Hopefully we'll see if there's a theatrical release of some kind. It's going to be a while, I think, until we get to actually see a physical version of the film. and yeah, we'll cross that bridge. You know.
Well, you also explored briefly in the doc something that I found interesting is that the movies that resonate and become successful is because there's something subconscious, something underneath. You know, the movies that become blockbusters, why do they become, we vote, right, as a popular culture. We keep track of box office is a barometer of how much it resonates with the public. Movies that are popular, movies that are not popular. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is Blade Runner, which was that Ridley's follow-up right after? Did he move?
It was.
Yeah.
It was. I know. It's unbelievable.
And Blade Runner I remember seeing it in an empty movie theater on opening weekend, an empty theater, which was disheartening. I didn't even know how to feel about Blade Runner when I first saw it as a kid. Now, of course, that's a movie that has resonated to today, so it's interesting to go from Alien, which was a wildly, a surprising success, let's say, and then to Blade Runner, which didn't succeed in the time in which it came out and seems more relevant now than when it first came out in terms of its predictive future.
I mean, we start talking about Blade Runner.
That's a whole other podcast.
I'm going to start crying because that film.
Is that your next movie? I hope.
Well, it's one of the projects I really want to do, for sure. And I want to see how Ridley feels about memory first, and if he likes it, then I will certainly engage him about doing something on Blade Runner.
Well, word on the street is Ridley wants to see your film.
Yes, he does. He's and he's sending. We sent him a copy of a link, obviously a very private link to memory, and
awesome.
And we'll see what happens. Yeah.
Cool. Well, Alexander, thank you so much for doing the Film Threat podcast.
Pleasure, of course.
Right anytime. Here. Yeah, and congratulations on the movie.
Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Take care.
You too.